guys, you're watching first edition and today we will discuss about arrays. Definition of an array is a collection of items of the same type stored at contiguous memory locations. So as you can see, these are the elements or the boxes where the elements have to be stored, and this whole unit is called an array. For example, this is a type of an integer array shown here, and this is a character array. The integer array only contains the integer values as its element, and the character array contains only the character values as its elements. So this is how we declare an array: type, array name, and array size. So for example, here we have declared an array of type integer. Name of the array is arr, and the size of the array is 10. Size of the array means the array can hold up to 10 elements. This is how the array is represented. These are the index numbers. Index starts from 0 to the index n minus 1, and these are the memory addresses. As you can see, error corresponds to the base address of the array, which is 101 here. And to access the individual elements of the array, using error of 0 will access the first element of the array. Using error of 5 will access the sixth element of the array. Using error of 9 we access the 10th element of the array. We have to put here the n minus 1 value, where n is the number of the element which we want to access. Since the index number starts from 0, so the value of the index we put here for the element to be accessed is n minus 1. Okay, so this is the syntax for accessing any element: error, and then square brackets, the index of the element to be accessed. Each block of the element in an array is of the size corresponding to the data type. Okay, example, for character each block is 1 byte, or for integer each block will be of 2 bytes, etc. For an integer array, for each elements of 2 bytes, the memory address may look like 100, 102, 104, 106. So as you can see, in this case we have written 101, 102. Here we have assumed each element has size of 1 byte. That's why the difference between every memory address is 1 byte. Otherwise, in case if each element is of 2 bytes, the memory address would look like 100, 102, 104, 106, and so on. Okay, all the elements in the array are stored in the successive memory allocations. So in an array, uh, all the elements are stored in successive memory allocations. So there is a special case for the character array. Character arrays are also known as string. So now we will discuss about the array initialization. Initializing the array at the time of declaration looks like this. So you can either declare the size over here, or you may not declare the size over here, okay, in the brackets, while declaring the array and initializing along with it. So what happens when you don't declare the sizes? The number of elements, suppose here there are 10 elements, so the array size will automatically be set to 10, and the numbers you entered here will be initialized to the array. In this case, you can give more size to the array and declare initialize only, say, 5 or 6 elements here. So this both works fine. So after executing these statements, your array will look like this. Okay, and What happens if you initialize only some of the elements, as I said before? So if you initialize only some elements, as the size of the array is declared as 10, okay, so the array will have 10 elements, but only 7 elements are initialized here. So what happens is the first 7 elements will be initialized to the values entered here, and the next rest of the elements will be initialized to 0 automatically. Okay. And to initialize the individual elements, we know how to access the individual elements, that is the variable name, and in square brackets we enter the index number. So suppose this is the array, a of 0 is equal to 10. What this will do is it will initialize the a of 0 to 10, and a of 4 is equal to 22, means it will initialize a of 4 to 22. Okay. Now, what this G means is if you're not initializing the array elements, it contains some garbage value. What are garbage values? Garbage values is some value which is stored in that memory location which has no meaning to you. It can be any value. Now, this is how we initialize a character array. So, character S7 is equals to hello. We write this in double quotes, as you can see here, or you can initialize it in this way also. Character 7 is equals to individual elements in the single quotes. Okay, this is quite similar to how we initialize the integer array, and this is the special case for the strings. Okay, and you can also initialize it by not defining the size of the array, as we have seen previously in the integer array. So what happens in this case is, so suppose you have declared the size of the array as 7 and you have initialized it to hello. Okay, so hello contains 5 elements. Okay, so as you see here, the array will be initialized to H, E, L and O. Okay, so the rest of the elements are automatically initialized, or you can say are automatically set to null value. Every string or every character array ends with a null value. Okay, so a null value can be also represented as the backslash 0. Now we will discuss about how to access the array. So for the example, we'll take how to print the array elements. Okay, so you can print all the array elements individually by accessing it using the index locations like this. For example, error of 0, at the 0 location we have 1, at the first location we have 2, at the second location 10. And you can also simulate this whole thing using a for loop. Okay, so for and I is equals to 0, I is less than 10. 10 here is the size of the array, number of elements in the array. Okay, I plus plus, and here we are printing error of I. So what it do is it will print the same thing. First I will be 0, so it will print 1, then I will be 1, it will print 2, when I will be 2 it will print 10, and so on. Now we will discuss about types of array based on the dimensions. So basically there are two types of arrays: single dimension array and multi-dimensional array. Okay, so we have seen the single dimensional array previously. Those were the examples of the single dimensional array. Now we will see the two dimensional array. So here is an example of a 3 cross 3 array. Okay, or you can say a matrix. So here is how we declare a two dimensional array. First is the data type, then the array name, then x value in the square bracket, first square bracket, which corresponds to the row, number of rows in your array, and the second y value in the second square bracket, which corresponds to the column value, number of columns in your array. So here we have declared an array, two-dim array, Okay, so it will look like this. So these are called the rows, and these are called the columns of the array. So as I said, the first square bracket tells you about the number of rows in an array, and the second square bracket tells you about the number of columns in an array. Now we will see how to initialize the two-dimensional arrays. So you can either follow this or this. Okay, so here what we have done is we have declared an array of number of rows 3 and number of columns 4. Okay, as you can see here. So we're initializing each row here. So the row first will have the value 2, 5, 7, 2. The second row will have the values 1, 2, 4, and 3. The third row will have the value 5, 6, 1, and 8. Or you can initialize it in this way. Here we have initialized it consecutively. So what will happen is it will take 4 values for the first row, then it will take 4 values for the second row, then it will take 4 values for the third row automatically. If any element is not initialized, it will be initialized to 0 automatically. We'll discuss how to access the two-dimensional array. For the example, we'll take how to print the two-dimensional array. Okay, so you can access the individual elements. Suppose you have to access the elements stored at the 0th row and 0th column, that is 2. So for that, the first square bracket should be 0, as it corresponds to the number of rows or the row. Okay, and the second square bracket should also be 0, as it corresponds to the number of column or the column. Okay, so when both are set to 0, we access this element. So this element is here is 2. Okay, so to access, suppose this element has the number of column 1 and the number of row 1. So if we see at ARR of 1 and 1, the value is 2. To access, say, this element, the number of column is 3 and the number of row is 1. So we have to check the value of error of 1 and 3. So error of 1, 3 is equals to 3, as you can see here. So for printing all the elements in a two-dimensional array, what we use is we use two for loops. The outer for loops counts the number of rows in an array, and the inner for loops counts the number of columns in an array starting from 0, because the index value starts from 0, and then we print the values of each element, where I corresponds to the row and j corresponds to the column. That's all for this video. See you in our next video. If you liked our video, please do like, share, and subscribe.